Hey everyone, I am Cody at USA Cycling, and I am here with Karen Jarchow, a amazing biker, someone who's doing a lot of great work in the community, and someone that we wanted to give a platform to kind of share her thoughts and how she sees biking in the future. So, how you doing today, Karen?
Hey Cody, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
Um, I kind of gave you a little bit of a tee up, but do you want to tell everyone who's watching your involvement with biking?
Yeah, sure. So I race for Team Topi Ergon, and primarily it's marathon mountain bike and just recently getting into some gravel. And I also own and operate a kids mountain bike program in my community that we really focus on instilling the love of the sport in a new generation. So it's really just about teaching the kids, the rules of the trails and how to keep our trails sustainable, how to treat other trail users, just really focusing on the joy of the sport as well, versus, the Strava segments of the sport.
Yeah.
And that's about ages 6 to 13, and then we get kids who are 14 and 15 to volunteer to coach to then earn a paid job when they're 16. So it's really just like a nice community program to get kids out on bikes.
That's so cool. And I know we talked about this before our call, but I'm super interested in that. I mean, you're out of Golden, Colorado, and you have all that beautiful backyard to play in. And I see all the work that you're doing at Vail Valley Alternative Sports Academy and all the engagement you have with kids. Can you tell me a little bit about sharing that beautiful playground with kind of the youth in your community?
Totally. So I'm actually based in Eagle, Colorado.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
That's okay. Golden's a pretty sweet place too. So the cool thing about Eagle is that everybody in our community is really on board with trails and trail development and trail work. And I really feel like our program here just connects that circle of getting the kids involved, and seeing how you keep your trails sustainable and how you, um, you know, how do you act on a trail to keep that trail open. Um, and It's really cool. We also have a program called Single Track Sidewalks, or an initiative rather, that um, they have built single track that kind of connects neighborhoods to the school. So kids get stoked on like riding their bikes to school.
That's so
So that's
cool.
a really fun, we incorporate that into our program as well, because it's a great tool to introduce kids to single track. It's a really safe way to introduce kids to single track because it's just right off the bike path. They can lap it. And there's also like progress of the trail. Like you have everything from like a flat, just straight away single track to little doubles and berms and jumps. So I feel really lucky to be in a community where they really embrace the sport and making it really attainable for kids to get into it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I saw in an interview with you in the past, but you talked about how we don't talk about racing unless they bring it up. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that's so important with the community is understanding that, especially like speaking from someone with USA Cycling, like we want to make sure that we're making biking accessible for everyone, regardless of if you want to throw on Lycra and go fast. So
Totally.
can you talk about how you kind of like make sure that that's a prevailing message with the youth that you work with?
Of course. So that is a huge part of our program. I don't even really tell them that I race. I mean, they find out, and then if they want to talk about it, that's fine. But I really want the focus in that young age to just be about what it feels like to like go off a little jump, or what does it feel like when you pop your front wheel for the first time, or like doing that and then sharing that experience with other kids too. Like that's like the the feeling I'm trying to cultivate in the sport, because I believe that if you focus on, that like joy and that fun and exploring with your friends and getting out on bigger loops, like the people who want to race that's a great foundation for those kids who ultimately want to race, versus like if you start a kid that, you know, they have to burn up this like fire road for whatever that's like miserable, and you make them do it like 4 times or whatever for whatever reason. I think you see more burnout in kids at that point, versus if you just focus on that joy. And I think it mirrors the lessons we need as well, as professionals, is just to always go back to, you know, why do we ride and what do we really love about it? And I think if you ask any professional, it comes down to the joy of the sport, for the athletes that stay in the sport for a long time. I mean, it'd be pretty miserable to be a professional athlete and not really love what you're doing.
Exactly.
So that's the big thing, is like with our program, I like to have that foundation of the fun and the joy and the sharing it with your friends, encouraging them to try something new, versus like I have to make it up this trail in this amount of time, or I need to be the first one down, or, you know, that kind of stuff gets nixed pretty fast. Just the general vibe of all the kids. So it's been, and we've had some like really successful high school athletes come out of our program. So it's a great example of just like where I believe the foundation of the sport should be.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that sounds so cool. And I see all the kind of fruits of your labor on social media and stuff with all those kids. So that's so awesome. One part I'd love to kind of dig in a little bit more about is you talked about the single track. So kind of like the infrastructure in the town, and also the really cool program you have about like keeping kids in bikes and having like a career out of that too. Like how, obviously it seems like that's really core to your mission, but how did you go about doing that to make sure that this is kind of like a coherent thought with the hobby, the way that you can kind of see an economic future in it, and also just like making sure that you can make space for bikes in your town?
Like how am I making it a career for myself? I'm sorry, I'm
Oh,
not quite
no, sorry.
following.
I just meant like, how did you go about like making sure that you tied in Vail Valley Alternative Sports Academy with the town itself? Like, did you see a lot of receptive,
Yeah, I
interested
just felt like
partners
it
in
was
it?
a natural relationship, really. Like we aren't in a large community, and I believe the more different systems can work together in a community, the stronger we all will be in like our overall mission of outdoor recreation, mental health, self-esteem, you know, whatever it is, economical impacts, you know, all of that. Like it just seems like a no-brainer. I'd like to work with our trails groups, our town, the group that built our single track sidewalks. I try to find ways to get the kids involved with whatever I can. And especially right now with our current
Yeah.
situation, I have more time. So I have more ideas that I can actually like put into action to get the kids out in the community more.
Right on. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on that stuff. I've been following along with like kind of your trail scavenger hunts and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Like, how have you seen, you guys have the benefit of having a lot of space to work with,
we do.
which is
Mhm.
really cool. But like, how have you kind of shifted the way that you get to interact with the youth development programs you have, with us being forced to stay apart?
Yeah, so I actually just had this like random idea when I was out on a ride one night. I ran into a kid's parent, and she just made the mention that her son was actually getting depressed through this because, you know, he wasn't able to ride with his friends. Like it's, you know, kids need direction, I believe. Like, and I think that's how kids stay out of trouble ultimately, if you keep them busy and engaged and having fun and challenged. And so after I left her and I kept riding, I just on that ride, I was like, oh, well, what if like we have this one climb in our backcountry that I feel like is challenging. And any adult would really agree with you.
Yeah.
It's called, well, we call it yellow chair because at the top of it, there's a yellow chair. And I was like, oh, well, how about I just like randomly put this challenge out to see if any of the kids would get out there, like, and one guessed the trail. Like I gave them some hints as to what the trail was. And then I give them like a couple things they have to do. Like there's like the first tier of the climb levels off, and there's this tree that we've joked it's called the tree of pain. And so in the video I was like, let's rewrite this. I was like, how about we'll call this like, let's just call this the hug tree. So you're going to get up to the tree of pain, you're just going to give it a hug. Yeah. I was like, we probably all could use a hug right now. So let's just give it a hug, take a little break, proud of yourself. And then you have your final push up to the yellow chair. So then they have to like snap a picture when they're sitting on the chair, and then they win stuff. And I was blown away. Like we had a 10-year-old go do it with his dad. And wow. I know. And I mean, so it was just so cool to see these kids like really like getting after it. And the coolest thing I think is like creating those experiences with their families. Like one of the girls that I coach, she's amazingly talented and just loves to ride. And she said, so she rode with her dad, and she said her dad needed 3 days to rest after it. But it's so cool because it like got them out in a place that like they probably didn't even know about.
Yeah.
You know, and like in camp, we don't have that much time to like get like a group of 15 kids out where I was had this challenge. So it's just been kind of like this momentum now of, so the next week I made it easier. And like in one day we had like 20 kids do it, of like, they had to do this other climb. And then we have a trail called the Riddle Trail. So then when they got to the Riddle Trail, they had to tell a riddle, because they have some pretty good riddles that a few of them I still haven't guessed.
I made a note on that. I was like, you guys have been putting out some pretty solid biking themed jokes and riddles. I was like, what's your favorite?
What was my, there are some pretty good. Oh, this one isn't biking themed, but, oh, this is a good one. So the first girl to do it was like, she finished it. I put it out at like 2 and she completed it at like 4. And her riddle was, what comes once in a minute, twice in a moment, and never in 1,000 years?
Man, she's already got me stumped. I'm not sure what it is.
I know. You have to kind of write it out to like see what it is, but it's an M.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
God.
And that's cool. Like, that's what I really missed about riding with, and there's a lot of things I miss about riding with the kids, but like when we take snack breaks, we tell riddles or jokes or stories, and the kids are just so creative. Like it's such a fun energy to be around.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who enjoys their time on the bike and sees all the benefits you talk about, I mean, less time than probably you do, but I know as a busy kid, like having an outlet like biking is a great chance to kind of bring your brain to the forefront, if you will, in terms of like being able to have productive thoughts and kind of have a good environment to learn in.
Yeah, I mean, it's where I go to clear my mind or to sort through things, or you know, but that changes too, because as an athlete you use it as like a tool to like perform and to achieve. And then now when we're not necessarily it's very unsure as to like when we'll be racing again, it's kind of a great opportunity to go back to using the bike as just, you know, a tool to be healthy and get your head out of a certain space or into a different space, or, you know, connect with nature. And like, we're probably doing all those things anyway while training, but it's like, it really focuses in on, it really brings you back to your why, I think.
Yeah.
This kind of like unstructured training. I know a lot of people are still like hitting it hard, which is awesome. I'm in a little different situation because I'm coming off a pretty extensive hip surgery. So I've just been riding. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Maybe this is like the perfect chance to talk about it. Like you talked about the why, and you talk about like the bike being like your instrument of choice to kind of level set and come back to stasis in a bunch of different parts of your life. So you get hurt, and that's kind of taken away to an extent. You know what I mean? You don't have that same tool to get
Right.
that same thing done. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, do you have like 5 hours? No, I'm joking.
We got the pro Zoom account, so we have as long as you need. I'd love to hear about it.
I mean, I was in complete denial for a long time that I was even injured. So it took me a long time to really just accept my injury and to realize that like I wasn't able to tap into what I usually can tap into because my hip was like completely shredded. Like there was no labrum left. There was like but I was like I was so convinced that I know I just need to train harder and
Right. Just bite my lip a little bit more and
yeah,
I'll
like
get
it's
through it.
supposed to hurt and that just means I'm doing a good job and all of those like ridiculous things that I can see now, but in the time I didn't know how to distinguish good pain and bad pain.
Yeah.
So I kind of fought it for a long time and I had a lot of really bad races and a couple breaks. And then I just let go of training and still stayed connected with the cycling community in any way I could. And that was great. And then when I had surgery, that's when it was like, there's no hiding from it anymore. So I thought I was just going in for like a basic labral repair, which luckily the surgeon that I have close to me is like one of the top surgeons in the world for athletes for this injury. And I was like, oh, great. Like, it's just going to be this routine thing. It's going to be like 2 to 3 hours. I'm going to be back on the bike. Like, I'm going to be fine. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
no
really good at
problem.
denial. And I came out of surgery 6 hours later. And basically they had to like make a new labrum and take a piece of my IT band, and they did like microfracture because the cartilage was already gone. I was bone on bone, and my bursa, I guess, was like super inflamed. So they just took that thing out and
Yeah, what do you need that for? No problem.
apparently it grows back. Apparently they said it's back already. So I'm like, okay, great.
Nice. Okay, good.
Yeah. So that's like when the mindset I really had to slow down and accept it and rest and just give my body what it needed, which is making it now a lot easier for me to treat the bike in a different way and to just tune in and really ask my body what it needs versus what I want it to do right now. Cause I'm still, although I've had a really positive recovery and I'm out doing rides pretty consistently, I still have to work on a lot of strength and things that I neglect when I'm training and in season. I think many endurance athletes would rather just go ride their bike for 5 hours than do a bunch of kettlebell squats or barbell squats and
You
be
don't
in a
like doing
sweaty
core
gym.
work religiously every week?
What's that?
You don't like doing core work religiously every week?
I mean, I try to really embrace. I do. I think it's just I just get really tired and I'd rather take a nap, or I have like a work deadline, or, and that's another lesson from all this pause is like, we could all afford a little slowing down.
Yeah.
I know I've had great benefit from it. But it's going to be a really interesting like re-entry into like, how are we going to move forward from all this? I hope we all have learned to maybe take a few things off our plates. Maybe, I don't know.
100%. Yeah, I think that's what we're all kind of waiting with bated breath and trying to figure out. People smarter than us of when it's safe to get back together, because I mean, you talk about all the community that you've helped build and really how the physical exertion on a bike is there's an instant feedback loop of the good
you need
that
it. Like, we need physical activity, but we also need community and we need each other, and like that like it's just an interesting time. Like when it's taken away from you, you don't realize like how necessary it is. Like the other day I had to go into the clinic to have it's just a routine injection they do into your joint.
Okay.
From one of the things that they did in there to kind of lubricate the joint and prevent any more inflammation. And I'm usually totally fine with needles, and like I can disassociate from pain pretty easily. And like he didn't even like touch my like hip yet, and I reached for the PA's hand and like squeezed it so death grip tight. It's like, I don't even know why I did that. Like, did I just need to hold somebody's hand for a second, or was I really like anticipating pain? Like, it was a really funny response, and we all laughed about it. They're like, it hasn't even brought the needle out yet.
Yeah. We're used to you being a little more laid back. No, I mean, 100%. I think we're all kind of starving for some type of, it's a lot of communicating like this. And I think people, to your point, they thrive on the communal aspect. And I mean, the hope is that people seeing stuff like this and understanding that they're commiserating together.
We're all going through it. Like, nobody is immune to the lack of connection. Like, I mean, they might be, but I'm not. Like, I need it. And it's so great when it comes back in, like, when that's what's so great about like our town, like really being on board with keeping our trails open. And like, you can keep your distance with people on trails if you run into them, and still say hi and like catch up a little bit. Like, it's not like you're like licking their handlebar or anything. Like, so if anything, like our outdoors is like where our community really comes together, which I really value.
Yeah. That's so cool to hear. And like, it's really awesome to see someone who has kind of had experience in all spectrums of the sport, like really getting down and feeling like your mission is probably in the development of future cyclists too, even as much as it is continuing your success in the sport as an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. There's nothing I love more than, it doesn't like if it's kids or adults or any kind of coaching, that I can help somebody have that like aha moment. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing somebody like, you know, find their own power via the bike. It's a cool process to be a part of, and it's definitely something now that we have this extended pause that I want to do more of. And that, you know, I'm just trying to follow those things more than what I feel like I should be doing, you know.
For sure. This is something that I know we talk about a lot, especially right now at USA Cycling, is like, we've all heard the anecdotes and kind of the news articles about people are pulling their Huffies out of the garage after 30 years, and they're doing kind of like, they're getting back on the bike because they see it as kind of an escape and a chance to kind of get that nervous energy out they have for being pent up so much. Do you have, I mean, I think you've probably already touched on it, but if you could say something to those people who are like getting back to the bike, like what would that be?
Wear a helmet.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's perfect.
Wear a helmet. Make sure it's not backwards. Make sure it's frontwards.
Yeah, I see a lot of bag helmets going on, and
make sure it's safe. I do this safety check with kids when they come with helmets. Is that, you know, you put your helmet on, you tighten it down, and you unbuckle it, and then you put your head down and shake it, and it should stay on your head.
Thank you.
That is so for someone just getting back into it. Safety is always going to be a concern that I've seen and been aware of. Check in with like local trail rules and regulations, because we have seen a lot of people get out on the trails, which is cool, which is awesome. That's what you want to see. But there are also rules that we all have to abide by to keep our trails open.
For sure.
So I don't know how to get that information out to those people, because I'm not sure, like, maybe they need to be at trailheads, maybe, I'm not sure. So safety and trail sustainability, I think, are two big key aspects of new trail users getting out there. And then also just baby steps. Like, it's funny because I noticed initially there was like this huge surge of like new people on trails and new people on bikes, and then it kind of fizzled. Like, we saw that, like, what is that, like the New Year's resolution, like
right, yeah, I'm gonna go
gym memberships go straight up, and then everyone burns out. And to just take baby steps, don't just jump in and go for like a 4-hour ride, or do, and then learn that maybe you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Just baby steps. Even like 30 minutes a day they show is great for mental health, physical health. Going for a bike ride with your kids on the bike path. Like, you don't have to go out and be this like professional racer and like, go get linked up to like all the, I don't know. Just get out and move and have fun.
Agreed. I think that's something that people forget a lot about is like, I think the bike you have is the right bike. Like that's kind of the same mentality that people need to have is like, you don't need every shiny object to enjoy yourself on the bike with other people too.
It does make it fun, but
it does. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you have a ton of cool toys to play.
Sometimes it's, I like to always say just like rung what you brung. Like,
yes.
Like,
well, and I was always told growing up that like it's amazing how fast a luxury becomes a necessity. So if you have electronic shifting, you're probably not going to love going backwards. But if you don't think about it too much, you can definitely have fun with whatever 2 wheels you have at your disposal.
Totally. Be like, hey, does it get you outside? Yes. Perfect.
Right.
Like,
Well, that's so cool. Well, what else? I mean, maybe like this is obviously something that was a theme through your injury recovery and stuff, but I'd love to know, like, we talk about cycling so much because of what our mission is, but also like you talk about mental toughness and some of these other things that help you get through that stuff that's associated with the bike, but also like what other stuff do you do to make sure that your mind's in the right place to still find joy in cycling and not get that burnout that we kind of touched on earlier?
Yeah, I think just going back on what we were saying earlier, I think for me personally, it's always really important to come back to my why. Am I getting into a habit of doing something for a place and an achievement and a time and a status and a media attention? And I think every athlete is guilty of all of those things at some point in their career. And that's not right or wrong. I think it's just the way you get fed into it, and but for me, the best I've always felt on the bike and the best the most memorable moments in a race or a ride or whatever is when I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. All I'm thinking about, like they call it your flow state. So you're just one with the bike and you are riding that rainbow of joy basically. And you just really go back to that why. And like, I think about when I first got into cycling, I mean, I used to just like drive my Jeep to Fruta and sleep at some random trailhead, have no idea where the trail went. And I would just ride for hours. No clue. Like probably awesome. Not the safest. And I don't think I would tell the kids I coached that. So don't get any ideas. But I just love that sense of like being on my own and exploring and using my own strength and mindset to like figure it out. So that's what I come back to, amongst other things of like connecting to nature. And obviously there's like a personal drive of like, how much can I push my body? Right. So for me, I like to always try to reel myself away from the like, oh, I need to be fast like her, or I need to be this or that, versus just being like, no, like I need to be me and do this for the reasons why I really enjoy doing it, versus what like I think I should be doing or the speed I should be going. And I think you find the most success when you just come back to those reasons of why you do it in the first place.
Yeah, obsessing about kind of the more achievement-based things is kind of counterintuitive, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it just like it dies out really quickly. Like I have won races before where I have not even been proud of. Like I didn't even give myself that moment of like, hey, good job, because I was already like, oh, but I won, but this person didn't show up, or like, yeah, but it really like wasn't that big of a race, and like, but I have this one next, or or whatever, versus like, you know what, like, let's just cut ourselves some slack and be proud of our achievements, and not, and maybe just not even think about like that as your goal. Like,
Yeah. Just
um,
living kind of like the mission from day to day of like why you want to do it, as opposed to like, because there's always another goal, right? Like that's
there's
always going to
always
be
going to
there.
be that next goal. So unless you are really content with like, with your why, like any placement's never going to fill that, whatever it is you're trying to fill.
Yeah.
Getting very deep.
No, but that's good, because I think even people who are at a much lower level of
It
competitiveness
doesn't matter
feel the
what
same
level you're
thing,
at. It
right?
totally
That
doesn't matter what. You can be the first time you've ever gotten to, like, it could just be a group ride with your friends. Like, um, yeah, I think we could all benefit from just having more fun and being a little easier on ourselves.
preach 100%. I feel you. Yeah, that's awesome. No, and that's good. Thanks for coming on and talking to us about that,
Totally.
because people need to hear that type of reassurance, especially from people who they might look up to and say like, well, she's got it figured out. I mean, look at
I
all these
don't.
accomplishments. Yeah, so even if it just
That's
makes
one
us feel a
thing
little better.
I think most people need to understand, is that none of us have it figured out. Like, like the people I look up to and go to for inspiration or advice, like they're still figuring it out. And I think that's like, and they have self-doubts, and they question themselves sometimes too, and they feel like they have imposter syndrome. Like, all, like, everybody is going through whatever they're going through. Like, nobody has it all.
Yeah,
That's
no
a
one's
good thing
immune to
to,
that type of feeling. So, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's like, so outside of just like all of the resilience that you possess personally, like are there other people or organizations that kind of inspire you to kind of set the example? I mean, you have a team filled with a ton of people who are high achievers. Like, what does that support system look like for you in the community?
Totally. So one of my inspirations and now dear friend, I would say Rebecca Rush is somebody that I look to and call and lean on. And
Yeah.
she's actually the person who gave me the confidence to start the kids camp initially. It was like 6 years ago. I went to one of her industry talks, and she just, I love her because she's just like no bullshit. Like, she's just like
Yeah,
a
for sure.
straight shooter and a hard worker, and just makes everyone feel welcome and accepted. And she's an amazing ambassador of the sport and someone I really look up to. But she had said during that lecture, she had asked, like, what do you want to see change in the industry for women or for kids or whatever? Like, what is it that you see in the industry that you think could change in a way? And that's what, so I was seeing a high level of like stress and anxiety and competitiveness in kids. And I have, that's never really that's never really hit me very well. Like, it's
Hmm.
always been kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of sucky for that. And so
Right.
she gave me the confidence, without even knowing it. I mean, I've told her now, but like, to change it. Like, we all have the ability to either complain about something or be a part of making a positive impact. And the only way you're going to do it is by doing it. Like, you can't just sit and stew or like sit and complain or like let it eat at you. And instead, just like figure it out.
That's
Go,
so
yeah.
cool.
So she's a
Yeah.
big inspiration. I mean, all of our teammates too. On like, I mean, we have Dave Weens on our team. He's
Right.
home
Yeah.
Uncle Dave. He's amazing. And his wife, Susan, like, they become like family. I feel really lucky to be surrounded by very encouraging, high achieving, but also just like down to earth and really good humans.
Yeah, I feel like, and I'd be interested if you agree with this, but there's a huge community around the bike, but especially like in your niche of endurance and ultra
Mhm.
endurance and stuff like that, like the kind of same things, the mental fortitude and stuff that you talk about is pretty prevalent in that group of people. So I can imagine they're probably a big source of inspiration.
Yeah. It's a cool group of people. Yeah.
want to first of all thank you. Like, this is so much fun getting to talk through this stuff with you, and on behalf of USA Cycling too, like, thanks for being such a great ambassador to cycling in the States. And it's so cool to see not only the achievement that you do, but also like laying the groundwork for others to do it behind you. So yeah, I just couldn't thank you more.
And
For
same back
doing
to you
that.
guys. Like, I think it's really cool that USA Cycling is reaching out to all different types of athletes and talking about these things that not a lot of athletes do talk about. So I think that's a really bold statement by you guys too. So thank you for being open to all this.
Right on.